have dialed has been changed. The new number is...
Ladies and gentlemen, for the first time on stage, Democritus and the Atomists. The founder of the Atomist movement, as far as we can tell, is one Leucippus, but we're just going to shove him in the corner because we don't know very much about him. Instead, today we will concentrate on Democritus. Democritus was a contemporary of Anaxagoras, and he had a lot to say about what makes up reality. According to him, two things best explain reality: atoms and the void. That is to say, things that do exist and things that do not exist. This is a direct confrontation to what Parmenides was saying about things that do and don't exist, because things that don't exist actually do exist because you can conceive of them. If there was something that you could not even imagine, you couldn't even conceive of, then, yes, it would not exist. But because you can conceive of things that don't exist, they do in fact exist. According to Democritus, physical matter, that is, things like CD and eraser, are made up of atoms. They are not made up of the void, because if they were, then this would be not CD and this would be not eraser. In fact, they would be not anything. They'd be nothing, because that's the definition of the void. But since these things have atoms, they exist. And Democritus placed great importance on trying to discern what qualities atoms had, because if everything is made up of atoms, then what you really want to do is try to figure out what the atoms themselves are like. It's much more important. For example, he would say that atoms that were in liquid were very small, very spherical. They would roll over one another, and that's why they were liquidy. When it comes to epistemology, that is to say, the study of knowledge and how we get it, Democritus was extremely materialistic. He could not get past the idea of atoms. He believed that when you gain any kind of information, it is transferred as atoms to your sensory organs and then goes to your soul atoms, that is to say, the very fine atoms that make up your immortal soul. Democritus put knowledge in two categories, the first being true-born knowledge, that is to say, knowledge of things as they really truly are on an atomistic level, and bastard knowledge, knowledge of things as they appear to be, senses, touch, colors, qualities like that, things not as they really are. By this account, the world can only be viewed in two ways, things as they really are, and things as they only appear to be. For example, a poet looking at the world would be using bastard knowledge, because he only sees things as they appear to be. A scientist, however, is using true-born knowledge, because he can see things as they really are on an atomistic level. This kind of thinking would reverberate all the way into the 17th century, when people like Galileo and Descartes would start to use scientific, mechanistic thought in trying to understand what reality is. This ultimately made Democritus very emo, though, because once he realized that reason relies on sense experience, that is to say, bastard knowledge, to try and reason things out and see what things really are, he realized, well, you can't get true-born knowledge. It's impossible. It's impossible to get real knowledge because any reason that you use to get that knowledge is taken from bastard knowledge, so we're all bastards.
This is impossible. This is all impossible. Oh, Sprite. Sometimes I think you're the only one who understands me. Yeah, I know what you're thinking. Can't get drunk off a Sprite. But you're just using your bastard knowledge because it looks like it's a Sprite can to you, but it's actually very alcoholic. And we're all just bastards, man. We're all bastards. None of us can figure out how you're supposed to, figure out what things really are, because you just drink from Sprite. Knowledge is in the depths.
Democritus also had a fair amount to say on the subject of ethics, and there is one particular quote that best describes him. Equanimity comes to men through proportionate pleasure and moderation in life. Excesses and defects are apt to change and cause great disturbances in the soul. These souls, which are moved over great distances, have neither stability nor equanimity. I quote from the book here. The key term here is moved. He is attempting to provide ethical advice on the basis of physics. His theory is based on three assumptions. 1. All experience is produced by the movement of atoms. 2. The good life is one in which this experience is pleasing. And 3. Tranquility of the soul, gentle motions, is more pleasing than all the pleasures of the body, large-scale motions. This is what we call hedonism, that is to say, seeking out pleasure. Now this is not to slight Democritus in any way, because he's actually more of a prudent hedonist. That is to say that he realizes that yes, pleasure is great, but not all pleasure is that great for you. Some pleasure should not be pursued. You have to be prudent about it, hence prudent hedonism. And really, what other kind of moral system could a materialist have when everything about ethical concerns, and even the soul, is quantified down to atoms? As with the pluralists, Plato and Aristotle were not very impressed.
Still bored.
Plato and Aristotle rejected the Atomist idea because they felt that an atomistic, mechanistic outlook of reality was not sufficient to explain it. So they disregarded the Atomists. And atomistic thought didn't really pick up again until the Hellenistic period, when the Epicureans came along and said, hey, we like this shit, let's start talking about it again. So sadly, the Atomists did not have some impact for quite some time, but they did cover necessary ground. This is pre-Socratic stuff. It's all about asking the questions, not necessarily about finding the answers. We leave that for the heavyweights like Plato and Aristotle. Stuck-up prima donnas. Their time will come. Well, that's the Pre-Socratics. If you stuck with me this far, I'm very impressed. We are about to move on to Socrates, Aristotle, Plato, and all the other great minds that came after. Next up, the Sophists. Stay tuned.
I'm going slightly mad. I'm going slightly mad. It finally happened. It finally happened. Oh, yes.
This place is a lunatic asylum.